When I first got into sex ed work, there was an immense amount of shame for coming to that decision and for the impact that that had on my parents' lives or people's perception of me. And the way that I was able to get over the shame of talking about sex for a living, and trust me, there was plenty of it, was I started.
I'm here in beautiful Cyprus to shout out the sponsor of this video here, Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is an all-in-one platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Now, whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it so easy to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, sell anything from content to products to time, all in one place, all on your terms. So, go check out Squarespace. Go get that free trial. Start playing around. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/shanbooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Again, that is squarespace.com/shanbooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Now enjoy the rest of this video. I'm gonna stare at the Mediterranean Sea right now.
On behalf of SEMA and all of the other incredibly wise, incredibly hot women of this world who come to teach us in their older years that there is nothing more powerful than standing naked in the mirror and looking yourself in the eye and saying and believing there's nothing wrong with me.
And we are brought up to believe that we're poised for failure. I mean, you look in the mirror, you are taught to look for the things that are wrong with you. Yes. Do you know what I do? I literally will stand in front of the mirror every single day with just my bra and panty on. And I look at myself and I love what I see. Because I love my body the way it looks. I don't care how much weight there is on my tummy. You know, my waist curves in like this and my hips curve outwards. And I look at that and then I do this with my arms and I get really excited. I love me. Sorry, it's just weird. It's just, I love me. I love me. Oh my God, I'm sorry for loving myself. No, but you know what I mean.
I would love to go through class today for how to defeat shame, some evidence-based practices that you can utilize in your everyday life if shame ever creeps up. Before we go into those points, I would just love to get a reflection point, maybe from 3 people or so here. What role does shame play in your life, if any?
This is so funny timing. I had a conversation earlier pertaining to shame, and what I realized about shame is that it is a limiting emotion always. It doesn't allow you to grow beyond. When somebody tries to teach or socialize you with shame, what ends up happening is it creates a barrier between you and exploration. I had a shameful relationship that was built for me surrounding sex, and as I got older, it created a barrier between me and exploring what felt good in my body.
Same here. I feel like shame currently in my life, or as I was growing up, gave me paralysis. I don't know if it's analysis paralysis, but in certain situations that I would find myself in, I didn't recognize how deeply rooted shame and guilt were in my life. So as I'm going through this unlearning process currently, I'm realizing like, you're not as far as you think you are. Like you can go further.
When I first got into sex ed work, the big thing that I felt, obviously for years, I felt shame for my sexual choices and for my desire to be a sexual individual. And then when I became a sex educator, there was an immense amount of shame for coming to that decision and for the impact that that had on my parents' lives or people's perception of me. And the way that I was able to get over the shame of talking about sex for a living, and trust me, there was plenty of it, was I started to look around at people and be like, okay, how did this person get here? They're here because 2 people. How did that person get here? Well, they're here because 2 people. And them. So this thing that everybody is making me feel so bad and alien and abnormal for talking about is actually the fundamental reason as to why they're even on this planet shaming me to begin with. So who really here has it twisted? Is it me or is it them? The universality point really just speaks to the fact that if we were all so different and our experiences were so novel from one to the next, or we have gone through and experienced things, or we have thoughts that no one else or no other human possibly would have, it would be impossible to organize society. The fact that we are able to work together so cooperatively, human social power is our ability to connect. We are born to bond, and our strength in bonding is our similarities. How similar we are to each other, how much we have shared experiences, shared feelings, and of course there can be nuances here or there, but all that comes out of you is human. And if it exists in nature, then it is normal. And if it exists in our society, then it's also likely normal as well. Again, that isn't to say that it is above correction or above improvement, but to make us feel like we are inhuman. There's dehumanization and infrahumanization, and those are two practices that I do not participate in at all. And to dehumanize someone is to call them a monster, to call them evil, to call them a demon, which I don't know any monsters or villains or demons, and I'm glad that I don't, because I am terrified of the dark and that would make things much more uncomfortable. So instead, I just know people who make bad decisions. I know people who exist on the dark triad of personality traits who require a lot of psychological intervention. I know people who have made bad choices. I would include myself in that bracket 10 times over and over again. I also don't infrahumanize people, which means compartmentalizing their humanity to the parts that I find tasteful and those that I don't. I see everything as wholly human and existing in the realm of human possibilities. And there are some experiences that I have had, and there are some that I have never been in the circumstances to see if that would be a possible outcome for me. Shame decreases when people perceive their experience as shared rather than unique deviance. So exposure to honest narratives, peer sharing, or psychoeducation about the prevalence of taboo thoughts and behaviors reduces the spotlight effect. And the spotlight effect is a belief that others are fixated on our flaws, or that our flaws are so remarkable that they deserve police searchlights and helicopters on them. So when people recognize our impulses as human rather than animalistic or demonic, the psychological arousal associated with shame decreases. And so when we experience shame in our body, we get increased activation in our amygdala. And the amygdala is the place of the brain that can also be responsible for emotional hijacking. And that essentially means where other parts of the brain don't have an opportunity: reasoning, sympathy, empathy, logic. When your amygdala becomes hijacked, that becomes the central focus part of not just the brain's experience, but the body's. And so shame is an all body, all mind experience. So by, again, creating a more universal touch point and seeing one another, even in the darkest parts of ourselves, we're able to actually apply more rationale and more reasoning.
This reminds me of PDA and my progression into being more comfortable with it. I was told that PDA wasn't appropriate when I was younger, and it needed to be done like for simple, like a kiss or something like that. It needed to be done in a private space, which is like, as I'm older now, I'm like, wow, that's out of control. Like, that's not true at all. So PDA, I guess, would be, I'm thinking in referencing to your question, would be an example for me.
Also acknowledging that very few times do we actually get to go down the chain of asking the why questions, because somebody can give you a rule of like, I don't think it's appropriate to hold hands in public. And then if you don't ask, okay, well, why? Well, because some things are best suited for the bedroom. All right, but we all require touch. We're born to feel. And physical touch reduces stress. It improves bonds and connections. Again, it can also decrease the stress of those around it from witnessing that we are in a safe environment. And in addition, it brings joy. It releases dopamine. It normalizes your serotonin levels. Like, there's tons of reasons why touch that's not just relegated to the bedroom can actually equate to a healthier and happier life. So like, I'm just curious as to why you think it's not appropriate to do outside of just the bedroom. And then the person has to answer that question. And if they have a really, good response, something that's very compelling for you, you're welcome to switch your opinion or to have a further discussion on it. But oftentimes when we have these rules that we then associate with a shame response, we actually don't get the opportunity to have this kind of discourse. We just accept them as face value without really going down that examination of like, well, why? And what if? And what do you think about? That allow us to come to not just a shame response, response, but just an internal moral positioning, because those are important too. Like your values and your morals, and values are the things that you care about, that you act on, and morals are the things that you hold yourself to in order to look in the mirror and say, I did my best today, right? Like what makes me feel or identify myself as a good person. And you always want to make sure that your moral compass is aligned with that. That to be said, this idea that there are rules for life versus rules that that person wants to live by, I mean, those aren't things we get to really understand.
PDA is a good one. I think for me, mine was outwardly expressing emotions, outwardly expressing affection, outwardly expressing too much joy sometimes, outwardly expressing sadness. I feel like I was kind of socialized to think like that's inappropriate and that is quote unquote too much.
All right, so now let's talk about cognitive reappraisal and attribution shift. This is a CBT centered principle. So, what happens when we use CBT practices is that we are actually able to attach or detach shame from a moral position and move it to a more neutral human experience. So, instead of saying to yourself, I am bad because, we can reattribute it to, well, I learned this rule from so and so who told me that it was bad because. So now we then know who the attribution is to. We also have minimized the rule from something universal to something personal to that person or that group. And then we get to decide for ourselves if we want to align with it or not. This is massively important, I think, when it comes to sexuality, especially as women. Who are often taught rules around purity and around what good girls do. And for Black women in particular, who exist between the confusing dichotomy of being super sexualized in the media and then living in the Bible Belt of morality, where any type of sexual action is seen as an act against God in your community. So this really confusing place where you get placed, where you just can't help but see yourself as a failure when it comes to your sexual self, or feel shame about it. And then, of course, once you get married, the shame of not being completely liberated in the specific ways that your partner wants you to be. So it's a never-ending cycle. And again, when you start to track that cycle, you start to see how not only kind of ridiculous, but also incredibly harmful it is to take these rules on for yourself. So I ask that question again here. What's a rule that you learned from someone else that you internalized as a universal rule for life?
I think I got a couple, but the first one that I thought about was do unto others as you would like for them to do unto you, which is like something my mom told me is the golden rule. But I kind of now see it more as like, in a way, projection.
Yeah, you know what? The golden rule is do unto others as you want them to do to you. The platinum rule is do to others as they have asked you to do for them. And I think that that's an important nuance too. Like I used to, when I first got into this space, get asked the question a lot of like, what's your love language? Because I was kind of like the craze at the time. But people would ask it two-pronged, like, what's your love language to receive and what love language do you like to give? And I always thought that was so strange, because it's like me going to France and being like, I like to speak Italian. It's like, well, that's not the language here, ma'am. So the idea of the golden rule, I think, also kind of speaks to that as well, too, is this notion that we can make assumptions on other people's treatment based on how we have learned that we're supposed to value and appreciate treatment from others, versus, again, looking at people as individuals, as good individuals, as creative individuals, who can have a unique response and a unique lived experience that doesn't fit within the guidelines and rules that were passed down to us.
I also love going back to the video with Auntie Sima, how she spoke about the fact that, okay, the rule for me would be growing up learning that there is good and there is bad. And there's no like, that is just the two that you have to subscribe to. There's no gray area. And unlearning that, learning that there are different levels of the spectrum. So that would be my one response.
It's just the truth. I know this. Okay, so now I want to talk about this one, which is body-based de-shaming.
Don't mind me, I'm just here chilling on the beach. But while I chill here, let me tell you about Squarespace. Now, Squarespace is literally the only reason why we continue to upload here. They keep this channel alive, so thank you, Squarespace. Because if it wasn't for y'all, I don't know what would be on this channel. But here we are. So let me tell you everything I love about Squarespace. The Fluid Engine. Now listen to me, the Fluid Engine is the next generation website editor from Squarespace. It's never been easier for anyone to unlock unbreakable creativity. Choose your website starting point and customize every design detail with reimagined drag and drop technology. Squarespace Blueprint AI and CEO tools. Start a completely personalized website with the new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. Then easily launch your site and get discovered fast with integrated, optimized CEO tools so you can show up more often and to more people and grow the way you want. Flexible payments. Make checkout seamless for your customers with simple but powerful payment tools. And in eligible countries, offer customers the option to buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. Now listen, I'm telling you right now, there is nothing worse than wanting to buy something and the checkout is confusing, but Squarespace makes it easy. Now, if you're really curious, go to squarespace.com, start playing around, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/shanbooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Again, that is squarespace.com/shanbooty to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. So go check it out. Do me a favor. It might make you feel as blissful as I feel right now. Feels great.
Now I want to talk about this one, which is body-based de-shaming. I think it's so important to normalize the fact that therapy is often a word that we automatically put talk in front of. And if anybody has ever attempted talk therapy and found it wasn't for them and then said, well, therapy isn't for me, don't worry. There are tons of more modalities out there for you. And I think that this is a beautiful prime example of an easy way to understand the importance of somatic therapy. Because again, like I mentioned off the top, is that shame is an inward response. And shame is also a response that is extremely body-based, right? And it is inward, in which we literally fold into ourselves, right? When we are having a shame response, we cover our face like embarrassment, we put our head down, we put our shoulders together, we may put our knees together, literally trying to cocoon ourselves, to shrink inside of our own universe and drown ourselves in our own sorrows. But a defiant response, right, when we are challenging social norms or critiques or other people's opinions, is really quite the opposite, right? So if shame is like here, then defiance is like here, right? And it's here, and it's here, and it's open, and it's arms open, and it's questioning, and it's your face is forward, right? Because you're like, what do you mean by that, right? Why would you say that? Like, where shame is, why would you do that? Why would I do that? Versus, what do you mean by that? So when we feel ourselves experiencing a shame response, actually taking stock of our own body. What is my body doing right now? And is that aligned with what I actually want to be doing right now? Because shame is also, of course, a conditioned response, right? So the AI camera, I gotta look at this comment. It's gonna make it crack me up. I knew it wouldn't disappoint, Callie. Callie said the AI camera is in fact a paid actor. Yes, it's really doing all the work for me here. When we feel ourselves going into shame responses, I actually had a one-on-one call this week with someone in the community who said, I was asking her about the joys in her life and what gives her joy and lights her up. And she was saying, I love going out and dancing and like rocking out and just going crazy, like letting my body go. But sometimes I'm doing that and then I'll see someone catch wind of me or like look at me like, why is she dancing that way? Or why is she acting that way? Of course, she can't hear this person say that there's music playing, but those are her interpretation of the words that they might say, possibly because those are words that her own family member has said to her, or friends have said to her, you know, when she's in those states of euphoric expression through dance. So she'll have these moments of like big and freedom, and then she'll see someone looking at her and then be like, oh no, that person can see me right now. Oh, it's so embarrassing. And in order to curb that, because you know that you're not doing anything wrong, you know that you can have that SEMA moment where you stand in front of the mirror and you look at yourself and you see the way in which your body has aged. You can appreciate the ways in which your body has expanded to birth 3 human beings into this world, you know, who are now old, and one of them has a human being of their own that they've birthed. You can see the history and the stories and the move from India to London and the ways that you've traveled. You can see the story of your life mapped out on your beautiful body. And instead of doing what you've been conditioned to do, which is look at your aging body or to look at the extra pounds and to have critique and to want to purchase and to want to improve and fix and judge yourself, you then just decide to put your hands on your hips and say, no, I'm doing it this way. And that decision doesn't just happen here. I always say this, in order to make an effective change, you must change more than your mind, right? Like I can make a snap decision that I'm going to start working out every day. That is just the tip of the iceberg of the changes that I have to make. I must make changes to my schedule, changes to how people interact with me, and changes in my body, right? When I go to work out, instead of being like, I have to work out, I have to say, I get to work out right now. I'm so grateful that I have a body that's healthy and able to move. Health is not something I take for granted. I am literally sick bi-weekly with these motherfucking kids. So I really have to adopt that mantra. Oh my God, I actually feel well enough to work out today. So reflecting on that for yourself, if you are trying to change a shame response, if you are trying to eradicate shame in your life in places that you know are one, universal, and that they don't belong there because there's a lot more connection than there is isolation in your experience. And two, you know that this part of yourself is something that was taught to you, not something that is necessarily genuinely true to you, then that's when you start to evaluate your body every time you feel those senses of shame coming up. So I won't go to you guys for this one right now, but if you are down to just even do that for yourself, what does it feel like in your body if you were to act it out? Try to think about something that you feel deep shame over, like, oh my God, I can't believe I did, or I can't believe I felt, and feel that in your body and let your body go into that posture. And then ask a defiant question of that. Well, why is that so wrong? Is that so bad? Can you tell me you wouldn't do anything too differently? With the information that I had, what did you expect me to do? Whatever it is, changing that to defiance and to strength, standing up for yourself in that moment. And how does that feel in your body? The fourth thing is gradual exposure to vulnerability. So Brené Brown says that shame resilience framework aligns with exposure-based therapy. And that essentially means that sharing these small shame stories or overexposing one's taboo nature or taboo habits with trusted individuals actually rewires fear responses. And of course, we know that too, this creates really deep social bonds. My entire career is really in thanks to this, right? Because I am willing to say the things aloud that I know are universal. Even if they aren't universally experienced, they're universally understood. Now I'm gonna ask for a little shameful share, obviously within a grander context and a more safe space and environment, the more you can share. I don't actually think I have a secret between myself and my husband, like Jared. I don't think that there's like a thing. Like I have said things to him that I'm like, I thought I would go to my grave and never tell anybody. So there are definitely not some things that everybody deserves to know. You have the right to your privacy, and of course, vulnerability can be weaponized against you. So that's important to note. But there are little things that we can make a much bigger deal of that can really benefit from coming to light. And I want to know if anybody has one that comes to mind.
A lot of my trauma is community based. I have a lot of relational trauma, which turned me into a very insecure, introverted person. And in trying to unpack that, I started to experience social anxiety pretty bad last year. And I decided my solution for it was going to be to apply for a job as an art teacher, where I stand on a stage and I have a mic and I'm teaching an art class in front of a room full of people. And that was insurmountable to me at the time, but I ended up doing it. And I still have my little quirky shame moments where I stutter a lot at the beginning class or whatever the case may be. But that exposure to vulnerability and putting myself out there did wonders for me, because I wouldn't be here today if I didn't do that.
Big round of applause on that one. That's so beautiful, Callie. And Samaya, thank you for sharing that. That is literally so relatable. It actually, I want to say, I've made huge strides this year because I did acknowledge that I had a social media addiction and also an addiction to the validation from social media. I was literally talking to my ChatGPT therapist. Judge me not, a little shame with that, but I was talking to my ChatGPT therapist about it a few months ago, and I thought it was something that I just wouldn't be able to overcome. I was reading Dopamine Nation, which essentially talks about the ways in which our brains literally rewire to accommodate for our addiction. And so I thought it would be such a battle for me to get over this addiction. And I literally have been like 3 months in, and I feel like a day and night difference. So um, I want to say I'm with you on that, sister, and there's hope for us yet. And Callie, that was beautiful. Does one more person want to share?
So, my name is Kanisha, and I had my first son at 16, and I am 35 now. So, I feel like the teen mom follows me. Like recently, I've been out, and I'll share that I have a 18-year-old, and they'll be like, "Ooh, you must have been fast." So, like that shame just still kind of following me of that.
What is the counter shame response to that?
The fact that we have a beautiful relationship. He's in college, and I, was there the whole way, and we made it. So that's usually now my reframe.
I love that. Congratulations, Mama. That's really, really amazing. And so we can roll right into the next one with that as a no, but pleasure as counter conditioning. And that essentially means too, sometimes when we're engaging in something, for example, we can experience shame while we're in the act, right? Whether that's through self-pleasure or pleasuring ourselves or eating, indulging in a moment of rest. So we're not even able to really experience these things that we're choosing to do for rest, relaxation, pleasure, and joy because we are, again, assigning shame to that. And when we go back to what we talked about at the top, shame is an emotional hijacker. It can jack the amygdala system and then again take over the entire brain and body. So you're not even able to enjoy the experience of being sexual. You're not even able to enjoy that donut that you're having because shame is attached to that experience. So you have to literally take its ugly head and pluck him off. And doing that by telling yourself, this is something that I'm doing that makes me feel good. This is a moment for me. This is a treat. Or I love the scientific reason as to why something's actually great. I could tell you up and down the reasons why orgasm is incredibly healthy for you. I'm sure if I spent some time actually researching sugar in small doses, like as treat or rewards, I can make some amazing arguments for why that's an amazing way to balance out your life and actually bring more health and vitality to your body. So arming yourself and counter arguments to actually be able to remove shame so that you can enjoy those moments of pleasure and reprogram those shameful things into experiences of pleasure, I think is massively important. The entire Kama line is really based around this, and Kama essentially means pleasure. It comes from one of the Hindu gods, Kamadev, and Kamadev essentially is the god of love and of pleasure. And in order to really experience that, you must move away from shame. And so this is jewelry that you are meant to wear both in the bedroom and outside of the bedroom. And I love that fact. I talked about this in the episode as well too, with my first vibrator necklace was the necklace. And that's because for a long time I felt too embarrassed to get a bullet or something I had to hide under my bed. Mind you, at the time I lived with my parents too, so there was layers to that as well. So for me, that was something that I was like, wow, I get to not only overcome this fear of the shame of being found out, of having this sex toy hidden into my room, but I get to go 10 steps further and actually wear it on my body. And that became such an important reframe for me, a reframe of seeing my sexuality as something that was not supposed to be hidden and secret and taboo and shameful and kept under a mattress, but a part of me that I could wear proudly. And also too, without subjecting myself to harassment, right? Like these are pieces that were worn in an intimate atmosphere that nobody on the street would know that unless I chose to invite them into that conversation, which also then exemplified for me the importance of my body, my choice, and that liberation and sexual expression didn't necessarily have to open me up to sexual harassment or unwanted conversations or touch or unwanted gaze. It became a beautiful secret between myself and my body and anyone else that I wanted to invite into that dialogue. So again, finding these ways in which we can replace shame with being seen and bring more visibility to it so that we ourselves give ourselves permission to enjoy in it.